Hello there, this is Veslemøy, and this is the first episode in a mini-series I wanted to make for a really long time. I call it The Quiet Pivot, and it's for anyone who's ever found themselves in that strange space where the work you've been doing for maybe many years just stops making sense. You know that feeling when you're no longer who you were, but you're not yet who you're becoming. That strange place where the old identity doesn't quite fit anymore, but the new one hasn't fully formed. That's what I call the quiet pivot, and it's exactly where I found myself back in 2016 when I left the oil and gas industry after a really long time identifying myself with that world. I still remember that moment clearly. After a really long time working as a geophysicist, I had to leave my work because of bad times in the industry, or bad depending on how you see it. But the industry was changing, jobs were disappearing, and at some point I was faced with this question that felt both terrifying and really exciting. What now? At first I thought I would go back, of course. That's what we're supposed to do, right? Find something similar, not get that hole in your CV, similar or as close as you can get. Transfer your skills in some way, perhaps, a little bit, but stay in your lane. But something had shifted in me after a while, and I guess the work that had once defined me no longer aligned with who I was becoming. I felt this disconnect between my professional identity and my self, like who I was becoming, and I had absolutely no roadmap for what to do next. For a long time I was writing about this, and I called the moments of clarity coconut moments. Those moments when something becomes clear, like a light bulb turning on or getting hit on the head with a coconut. Not any like small shifts or changes, but big ones that change your path forward and make you see the world through different glasses. What I didn't have back then, and what I desperately needed, were tools and stories to help me navigate this in-between space. I needed to know I wasn't alone. I needed permission to explore without having all the answers. And I needed practical ways to reconnect with who I was beyond my job title. And that's exactly why I'm creating this mini-series and the companion tools that go with it, because I know there are so many of you out there right now experiencing your own quiet pivots, whether by choice or not. Maybe you've been laid off from a job you thought would be forever. Maybe you've outgrown a career that once felt perfect. Maybe you're returning to work after raising children, or you're approaching retirement perhaps and wondering what's next. Or perhaps you're simply feeling that persistent, like pit in your stomach, that there's something else you should be doing with your life. Even if you can't quite name it yet. You keep asking yourself, is this it, really? Whatever brought you to this in-between space, I want you to know 3 things. First, you're not alone. This journey might feel isolating, but there's so many of us navigating similar waters. Second, you're not too late, and I can't stress this enough. There's no timeline for finding meaningful work, and your previous experiences, even the ones that feel irrelevant now, are valuable parts of your story. And third, you don't have to have it all figured out. The pressure to leap from one fully formed identity to another is unrealistic and unnecessary. Sometimes the most important thing is simply to listen to yourself, to what energizes you, and to the possibilities that are starting to emerge. In this mini-series, I'll be sharing stories, both my own and others, about navigating these in-between spaces. We'll talk about saying goodbye to old identities without burning out or burning bridges. We'll explore how to rediscover who you are beyond your job title. We'll look at ways to spot what's working and what's not without overthinking it. And most importantly, perhaps, we'll replace pressure with exploration and curiosity. I've also created something to go with the podcast episodes. I call it the Quiet Pivot Companion Pack. This is a collection of tools that I wish I had myself back then. They're especially designed for this in-between space, not to push you or fix you in any way, but to give you space, spark your curiosity perhaps, and help you stay grounded while you figure out what's next. In your own time, your own way. I will come back later to what this pack includes. It's actually still in the making, but you will get access to it either via my Substack or as a link to my Notion page where I will store it. When I left oil and gas in 2016, it felt like a crisis. Looking back now, I can say that I'm glad it happened. Being unemployed is absolutely no joke and not something I'd recommend if you can avoid it. And how well I handled it, that I would say varied a lot. But I now see it as I learned a lot, and I wouldn't have wanted to be without that experience. Actually, it led me to discover a world of creative, positive, and really skilled people I didn't know existed before I went on this journey myself. People from all backgrounds with different goals and ambitions, but with a shared optimism and desire to create something meaningful. That's what I hope this podcast miniseries becomes. A place where you can get that inspiration and hear those stories, learn from other people, and find comfort in knowing that you're not navigating these waters alone. In the episodes to come, we'll dive deeper into specific aspects of the quiet pivot. We'll talk about practical strategies, emotional challenges, and unexpected opportunities. And we'll explore how to design your days around clarity and energy, not hustle. So whether you're just beginning to feel that something needs to change, you're in the messy middle of the transition, or you're starting to see the outlines of what's next, I hope you'll join me on this journey. Remember, you don't have to leap, you don't have to have a plan, and you don't have to do this with a big splash. You just have to stay curious and open to change. The next episode in this mini-series will come next week. Until then, keep your eyes out for what's happening on my Substack. There are many good things in the making. You can subscribe at viklavenes.substack.com. Thanks so much for being here, and remember that change often leads to something better. See you next week.